Hello, my name is Eleanor Chiari and I'm the Program Director for the BA in Language and Culture. The BA in Language and Culture offers you unique opportunities to explore and tailor your degree according to your specific interests, particularly as you move into the second year and further into your studies. The degree probably needs a little bit of explaining, so I'm just going to go through some of the main features of the BA in Language and Culture, starting from what we mean by main language and minor language. First of all, any student in the BA in Language and Culture gets to choose a major and a minor language. What the difference between those two entails is that the major language is going to be the language that will count the most towards your degree, where you will have more so-called content modules, which are modules in literature or history or linguistics, depending on which sort of areas you're most interested in. But these are primarily modules that are offered in SELCS or in SELCS if you're studying Russian and Russian languages. So your choice of major language also determines where you're going to do your year abroad. So if you decided to study French and Arabic, you would do French as your main language, and then you will spend the entirety of your year abroad in France or in a francophone country. And you would only study Arabic in the CLI, which is the language center, and then you could continue to progress into the final year. Your minor language will either be taught in SELCS, as most of the smaller departments are, or if you're going to study some of the languages that are not offered in SELCS, such as Chinese, Japanese, or Arabic, but also if you're not studying French or Spanish as your main language, then these will be offered in CLI. Now, the details on the specific combinations of languages I'm not going to go into. There are some restrictions on what language combinations you can have and which ones can be in your main language. The primary ones being, because we don't offer a year abroad in China or in the Arab world, Arabic, Mandarin, and Japanese in particular are not offered as main languages, but also in general, we do encourage you to take your main language in departments where we have a strong offering in SELCS. And that's the way the rules work. But don't be too bothered about that, because we do offer an incredible range of language choices, and I don't think you will struggle to find a main language. Now, let's say you fall in love with your minor language during your first year. You might never have studied something. Let's say you discover Swedish or Italian, and you find that you're actually passionate about it. You've changed your mind. What is special about the BA in Language and Culture, which stands out compared to other modern language degrees, is that in your second year, you can swap your major and minor language, which also means that you're going to be spending your year, you can spend your year abroad in the country of your minor language if you've so decided to swap. Similarly, if you struggle with your minor language, let's say you take up Arabic and you find that it's actually so much harder than you expected and you don't agree with how it's going, in the second year, you also have the option of taking an ab initio language at first year level in the second year. This is a very unusual feature of the BA in Language and Culture. Now, some students take this option because they're struggling with their minor language, but many very able linguists who already speak 2 or 3 languages and want to pick up another language might decide to study, say, Dutch, for example, which is the closest language to English, and pick it up very quickly in a year's time, and are happy to then go on to, say, a Scandinavian language or another language that's related to some language they already speak. So I should note that the BA in Language and Culture only allows you to study 2 languages at any given time. A lot of students ask if they can do 3 languages. This is not possible. But with this trick of the major language, super able linguists can do this by leaving one of their languages and picking up a second language ab initio or at the level that they speak. So that's a special feature of the degree. So you're also, the final special feature is that in the final year, you can drop your minor language if you wish to concentrate on the content modules of your first language, or if you develop a passion at the last minute that really takes you in a different direction. So I don't know, I have a student at the moment who's very interested in medical anthropology. He's suddenly discovered this is his big passion. So in his final year, as part of his options, he could drop his minor language, and instead of his minor language, take some medical anthropology classes offered, if he can find some, in the anthropology department, or even outside of UCL. This is another big feature of the BA in Language and Culture, is that both in the second year and in the final year, you have what is called an outside option, where if you develop a passion for something else and you find a course that interests you from another department or even outside of SELCS, you can ask if you can get permission from these other universities to take classes in other departments. So in the past, we've had students who suddenly developed an interest in journalism or in anthropology or geography or politics, and they are allowed to take these extra modules. So that means that your degree, even though it is solidly a modern languages degree, it also has this additional interdisciplinary feature that really allows you to create your own degree within SELCS. So what else is special about the BA in Language and Culture? So all students on the BA in Language and Culture in their first year take the BA in Language and Culture core course. This is primarily a seminar-based discussion course that covers an incredibly wide range of topics and introduces students to methodologies and theories that are useful in any of the courses that they decide to engage in. The course, I like to describe it as if it were a tapas meal, where you're given lots of samples to taste. And then if you find that you really like patatas bravas or you really like Pimentos del Padrón, you can have a whole plate of them by focusing on your essays, by deciding that those are going to be the courses that you're going to be focusing on in second and final year, or by deciding to pursue these sort of topics that you're tasting in your essays or in your final presentations. So in these classes, and I could just, there's quite a, I will introduce you to these classes at the beginning of the year, but they have three main, so the course is called Language, Culture, and Representation. So it's primarily focusing on social linguistics, issues of translation, gender and language, post-colonial literature and translation. Then theories, so language, culture, so cultural studies. There's a large component of introduction to various strands of cultural studies. So from gender studies to visual culture, museum studies, memory studies, what else? Theories of representation. There are some practical hands-on lessons that are focusing on deconstructing advertisement, looking at reading the city. We have a whole branch on sort of almost comparative literature-based theories of walking in the city and reading the city as a text, which then culminates in a visit to the Museum of London, which allows us to apply some of the museum studies theories that we will have read and explored. You also get, as a big feature of the course, in the second term, you engage with your fellow students to prepare oral presentations that are very well researched and that for which you are assessed. And to give you an idea of the types of topics that have been covered in past years, we had students who worked on music videos and cultural appropriation in Korean pop. And so they were looking at the question of, well, what are the racial implications of Korean pop artists using cornrows or Native American symbols? And is it any worse or better than a Western artist doing that? Another group was focusing on drag and the history of drag culture. Another group focused on the comparative subtitling of the Frozen song Let It Go in Catalan, Italian, and Spanish, and the sort of political implications of some of those translations. Other students worked on the difference between nakedness and the nude in art and looking on the larger scale. And these are the types of topics that students have engaged in. And that would be an opportunity for you to really practice on your presentation skills, on coming up with sort of video technology presentations, working in groups, and then public speaking. Because the way we set up the presentations, we invite finalist students to be the sort of judges of these presentations. So you get an opportunity to present in front of strangers and to really develop a whole range of skills that will serve you in the rest of your life. So that's the first year core module. In the second year, there's an optional module, which is really designed as an in-depth academic writing training ground. And it's called Applied Cultural Theory, and it's also taught by me. And in that course, what we do is we take the work of 3 theorists. So this year, for example, we looked at Michel Foucault, Donna Haraway, and Susan Sontag. And then we look at different academic applications of these theorists' work. So other scholars who've looked at, used the writings of these theorists or some key texts from these theorists, and then the students get an opportunity to apply these theories in writing to a work of art or of in the media. So this year we looked at Michel Foucault's ideas of surveillance and the panopticon applied to Michael Haneke's film Caché. We looked at Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto and applied it to the series Westworld. And then we've looked at Susan Sontag's theories on regarding the pain of others and applied them to the question of police brutality videos and Black Lives Matter. The final session is always determined by the students who decide themselves what they want to focus on. So that's what we focused on this year. They tend to be topical and more social media based in various ways. So these are the BA in Language and Culture specific modules. And then as you progress into your degree, you have these outside options. You continue to take ELCS modules, which I hope have been explained to you. And if you really become deeply passionate in the subject matter of your main language or even your minor language, you can continue to only take courses within the degree. So BA in Language and Culture students are very diverse. They come from a very wide range of backgrounds. Some of them are English and have only spoken English all their lives and are just very interested in languages. Others come from very mixed backgrounds where they might have grown up in Japan but have an English mother and an Italian father, and they've gone to international schools. It's very, very mixed, both in terms of socioeconomic background and in terms of training. But what brings the students together is an excitement and a passion around language learning and around exploring matters of culture, whether it's in the social linguistic branch or in the cultural studies side. And there's always, within each class, we have this sort of two different types of students. So the linguists and the cultural people. And the blending together of the two groups make for really exciting discussions, a really exciting environment where you are really encouraged to flourish and to develop your own interests and your own directions of study. I will be your personal tutor throughout the 4 years of your degree if you decide to join us. And that means that I will be following your progression from year 1 to year 4, which allows me to really advise you on how you want to develop your studies, but also to be there for you if anything happens, to support you throughout difficult times when these emerge. I hope they don't, but if they do. So I would be the entire department for you, but of course you off into the SELCS departments as well. Sorry. So now I say goodbye. I'm always available to answer questions on email if you see this after the open day, but also I'll look forward to meeting you online. All right. Nice to meet you. Take care.